Welcome to the Healing Manifest podcast, the one true place for you to learn to becoming your best self. Each week, we're going to have a new guest on for you to learn ways through their experience, as well as solo episodes where we focus on different ways we can teach you how to become your best self. If you have any suggestions for episodes or things you want to hear more on, please comment them below. Feel free to message us so we have new ways to learn how to help you as well. Also, if you enjoy these episodes, please help us boost with the algorithm. It's going to help a lot. We have gone up about 20% in subscribers as well as followers on our Instagram page. The more that we get, the more we can grow. The more of a budget that we also have to bring in bigger people and focus things more on what you want. This week, we're going to have an amazing guest, someone who I think I have one of the closest bonds to. So highly I think of her. Amazing photographer in the city. I personally, to me, the greatest photographer in Toronto. Honestly, one of the greatest photographers on the entire Western Hemisphere. I have the pleasure of calling her my fiance. Please welcome Kimia Parsa.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And honestly, this is an episode I've been wanting to have you a part of because one of the things that people ask me a lot is they want to have an episode that focuses on the dating experiences that they have. And me and you, we get a lot of people that ask us how we do it ourselves. And I was like, you know what? We need to just have one episode where we can talk with people and help them, or even just have them see from our experience how our approach was and see if there's anything for them to learn as well. And I guess, you know what, as I always do, I let the guest start with an introduction based on with this kind of episode. Please go off. Let them know who you are, how your journey as a photographer, and how from there we met, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a freelance photographer, videographer as well, mainly photographer based in Toronto. And I work a lot in like the arts, culture, branding, music, vibrancy type scene. So that's actually kind of how we met, because I wouldn't have known about this particular party and this particular community of people, like artists within the city, if it wasn't for like the work that I do and stuff like that. So we met at a party. It was at this place called the Drake Underground. And a mutual friend of mine was there with me. And long story short, she basically noticed that he was there too. And he was in the art scene a lot more at that time as well. So she just thought, you know what? I need to introduce you guys. I just feel like you guys would have really good synergy. I don't know, F it type thing. Like, let's just see what happens. So she went over with me, and then, you know, we shook hands. Hello, hi, how are you? I really noticed how you held yourself differently from a lot of other people, so I liked that. But then I kind of just like, you know, let you come to me if you wanted to. You know what I mean? That was kind of my approach, okay? So then I went on. He did come back around once, and then he came back around again, and then we kind of just started dancing, and we had a really great night dancing. And yeah, I just felt like a very different energy from you, and you weren't afraid to be yourself, and you weren't afraid to like express yourself the way you wanted to based off how you dressed, how your hair was, how you held yourself. So I just like that, because sometimes, you know, I feel like within our age group, even past, like, a lot of people say high school, but also like in your 20s, I feel like you're still trying to like figure out who you are, and a lot of people don't really know where they fit in, and some people like to go into what's common. But I liked how you were very much in your own lane. So that's my experience.
And to clarify what you were saying there earlier with how we both met in this event, and the fact that you're in that creative space, I was in that creative space. To clarify for those online there, at this time in my life, I was DJing before I was doing a lot of like consultations, coaching, and branding work. I was doing a lot of DJing, and I was doing a lot of events. At this time, I was actually just starting. So I think I had like 1 or 2 events under my belt at this point. And I went with another friend of mine who was starting to get into the DJ scene. And he told me about the event and he said, hey, person I know throwing a party at the Drake Underground. Let's just go get some networking, understand the industry a lot more. I was years in already with music production, so I had enough of a gauge of people within that circle. And the friend that introduced us is within that circle as well, which was interesting enough. And I was at this time, I was about, I would say, pretty much almost a year out of a breakup. And I was very transparent. I was in a phase where I was just out and about. Without being very respectful at the same time, I think can put 2 and 2 together what I mean by that. And I was very much, even in that phase of doing that, I knew it wasn't sustainable. And I knew that it wasn't fulfilling. And I knew I wanted to be away from that. There was something about just meeting new girls every other week or whatever it is. Like, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. But the idea itself of letting that kind of lifestyle be my life, I knew that wasn't it. There's too much, especially as for men, there's too much concerns. There's too much, for lack of a better word, there's too much risks with that kind of life. What happens if you have a kid? What happens if this person says whatever they want about you? You're dealing with volatility of different individuals that you have no idea who these people are.
Yeah.
I knew I didn't like that. And at the same time, I knew exactly what it was that I wanted. I knew I wanted to have a very modest life. I knew I wanted to, at the same time, someone who understood with what I was doing in music production and DJing, someone who understood those kind of hours. Because as you understand yourself, a freelance photographer, the hours that we work are non-conventional.
Yeah, they can be all over the place.
All over the place. And the amount of time that you could be spending away from home, we probably both experienced having dating experience with people who didn't understand.
Yeah.
Just didn't understand, like, I'm away, I'm working, I can't be at your convenience.
Yeah,
right?
which also like went into like trust.
Exactly.
What are you what are you doing? Who's this person? Who's this client?
And it's understandable. It's like, okay, like 100%. If this isn't your lifestyle, I can't expect you to understand it. But the fact that you were in the industry, you were very successful with your work as a photographer, I knew that was a big thing that had me like, okay, you're at least going to understand my life. And that's a big thing. You, with a lot of the things you spoke about, I was like, okay, you are someone who has put a lot of work on yourself mentally. That was a huge thing. And
we're not perfect.
But
it was a big growth that I reached at that time.
It's definitely a big thing that there was that work and the openness and understanding.
Yeah, effort.
And it came from one of our first conversations where we spoke about our traumas very openly. Literally the second night.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it wasn't like emotional dumping to me. It was just a very like transparent conversation. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, like I'm leaving this person and he told me all of these things and now I just feel weighed down and I feel confused because like he seems still so hurt. Like we were both very in an accepting stage of what happened to us, but it's like we were talking about what we acknowledged did did shape us in a way, if that makes sense, So yeah.
And it's like
it was refreshing.
And then that's the thing is like exactly what you said is it never felt like trauma dumping.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were able to speak about those things and it never felt like that told me a lot of what I needed to know.
Yeah, and you as well, because like obviously we're not going to say what they were, but very, very heavy things on both sides. But it's like, it's just like, the way you were talking about it was like, you know what, I accept that this happened. I know that this happened, but this is the place I'm in now, and this is what I want for the future. And I think that that's important.
Yeah. And yeah, that conversation was a big thing of me knowing, like, okay, this is someone I know I would want to be with. And from there, I believe a lot of people like to say, like, this is someone I like. I don't know. I don't have my full 2 feet in usually at the beginning. And that's where that dating stage can take for some people, like 6 months. I hear some people that are in that, like, I guess not even dating. It's that talking stage, I guess they call it.
Like situationship, like, oh, we're non-exclusive. I don't know. Yeah.
They're
for
in
a
that
long
phase.
time.
Some people are like 3 years into it
Yeah.
before being official.
Yeah.
And my personal belief of that is it comes from, it's never so much the other person, as much as part of it kind of is. A lot of it boils down to self, and it boils down to your own discipline.
Yeah.
And being able to say, I do have a person who checks off like almost all of my boxes here. To expect anyone to be perfect of what you designed in your head is unrealistic. And you have to love the things that you do like about this person, and understand that, you know, the things that aren't perfect, the things that aren't going to be there, that you can understand it, live with it, and to a point love it, like appreciate it.
Exactly. Like those, like that, it's like the 10% thing.
Yeah.
Like that 10%, like, of course it has to be things that aren't like extremely crucial and necessary.
Yes.
But like you said, like we always surprise ourselves, I think. A lot of people end up with quote unquote, oh, they're not my type on paper. And I feel like that maybe is kind of a rendition of that, because it's like, this is what you think that you want, but you're going to grow to love this fully, you know? So.
And it's like I was saying in the Shane episode, for example, where I'm very much tied to speaking to my future self. And being, okay, future me, like, what's the life that you want to live? And it really revolves around, I do want to have a wife. I did want to have kids eventually. And the biggest tip I have is, you have to be able to say to yourself, what is that life like for me? What does that look like? I want to be able to raise my kids in a certain way. And a lot of the ways that I knew I wanted to, I was like, you're someone I could see them learning what I'd want them to learn. Right.
Yeah, and vice versa. Yeah.
That's a big thing that you do have to look at when you're dating someone is this someone that I can look at and be like, that's a parent figure, assuming kids are in your journey.
Yeah.
Assuming kids are what you'd want in the end goal.
But for us, this is like a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing of being able to realistically say, okay, this is a personality I do. When I look at who I'm going to be when I hit 60, hit 70, this is someone that's that person, right? And it's interesting because one of the things we bonded on quickly outside of recognizing that is we watched a lot of like the Netflix reality shows, like.
Yeah, and we like to pick apart people's psyches.
Yeah.
Like we pause the episode and we're like, you know what? This person is probably going off from something, like there's a trauma thing there. I don't know. Like we would just, we just like picking people apart in these
Picking
shows.
Their brains.
Their brains. Yes. Their brains, or like what they're thinking, or like why they're acting a certain way. Whether it's like Love is Blind or like even like
Perfect Match,
yeah,
all
those are like all obviously there's some really ridiculous reality shows that were like, doesn't even matter at this point, this is all a mess. But it's
still that conversation we're able to recognize and have, and we both understand enough, we learned enough about, okay, this is usually tied with this, like this is what we recognize for people,
patterns and stuff.
We know what we see, we know what we find, and we know we can understand enough where it's like, okay, I can see what a healthy looks like. We have this idea of what this can be, right?
Yeah.
So those were great ways of bonding and recognizing with each other. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Those literally, like I was going to say, that those were ways I feel like we bonded, and like there were ways that there were outlets kind of that we could use to talk about, like, oh, like what do you think about how this person's acting?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, if he thought that that guy from one of the shows with all the red flags, like that's a stand-up guy,
Yeah.
then I'd be like, okay,
Those who know, I mean, if I was to say, you know what, Harry seems like a good guy. Harry from Perfect Match.
The latest season of Perfect Match.
Or look at anyone from like a lot of those
I'd
Too
be
Hot to
like,
Handles.
ooh, there's a lot to unpack here. So,
And we learn a lot from those of like, okay, recognizing these red flags. It's not always. I feel like sometimes whether from what you experience, you have a bias to certain red flags, and it's almost for some people. I feel like it's almost like, for lack of a better word, it's almost like a Stockholm feeling where it's like you could be tied as well to certain toxic traits because there's a dopamine hit that hits for people with dating, and when you're going through highs and lows and you see so many highs and lows in your relationship, your brain loves the highs, but it understands at the same time it can't experience this high of a feeling if it doesn't experience lows. This is where your brain gets conditioned to. So because you're so conditioned to this flow of things, you're just like, I can't have someone who's just plain and just right down the middle.
Yeah, it can't always be like, and of course, like this isn't applied to everyone, the average small, like no, like the average small disagreement or whatever. Like those are normal, but we're talking about real like highs and lows, like people on the verge of breakup and then never mind, we're in love again, like stuff like that, like.
That's right, and that's right. People, they get really conditioned this idea of like, okay, like, I like toxic. It's not so much that you really don't enjoy the toxic.
We hear it on those shows too. Of like, I think I like toxic, and
it's not like, even just in the shows, because people might think, you're just
100%,
relating so too much in the reality shows. No, this is people even we know in our own personal lives. But this is
interesting because it's being like broadcasted, and it's kind of like a norm.
Yeah.
So that's why, it's not even like a taboo thing.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, I'm ashamed to say it. Like people openly say it now as if it's like, it's cute.
And
I'm like,
it's like,
no,
come on.
I can't, my brain can't go through that anymore. I'm very much at a place in my life where I want people who bring me peace and make me feel like my inner child is like healing. You know what I mean? Like I want that. And it's like, I just physically, like, even like visceral physical reaction, like I can't be around people that don't bring me that peace.
And it's
whether
funny.
It's friends or partner. Yeah.
Sorry. I was gonna say it's funny you say that because I remember being on an experience where I was dating someone and they said like, what's a value what's something that you really want out of a woman? Like what's a big trait that you want out of a woman? To quote kind of what she was saying. And she said, you can't say peace though, because that's a cop-out answer. And I was just like, dang, what? I don't know what to say, because that's
ultimately what you strive
peace
for.
Is my desire in life. So if I desire peace in my own life, I'm gonna want my partner to have that same ideology, right? We see it a lot as well, like outside of even just reality shows. I feel like social media algorithms fill the opposite gender with feeds that go against them.
It's a lot of men hate women, women hate men.
Yes.
Right now, and it comes from, the thing is that it, like, all of it comes from legitimate experiences.
Yes.
But it's just, I think, blown out of proportion and just generalized to the point where it's like some people are so in that mindset that they're not even willing to give, like, that dating experience like a real chance anymore, which is at that point it's like, okay, you've lost the balance of like being aware that there are some, if you're a woman, like I'll speak as a woman, there are some men that display this and this in terms of bad qualities, and you have to be careful about but then there's also men that don't. So I've had bad experiences with men, and I've had to heal in certain ways, but I never like applied that fully to the next, or I never liked to. That was never my goal. I'd be like, you know what? Okay, heal from it. If I meet a next person, whenever, it's like I'm going to treat them and kind of give them the grace, obviously, as if they are a whole new other person. And it's just, people have to prove you right or wrong.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing.
What I like is like you said, you kind of have to give each person their own chance. And
Yeah.
I find what's happened now is we're almost starting to just shoot ourselves in the foot now,
Yeah.
where it's.
Yeah.
I feel like you said, a lot of these things people say online, they come from real experiences, real places, and they have a lot of great facts and truths that they do mention. It's usually the end thesis.
Yeah. Of like this, so what? Like this is what you should
Like,
do next.
exactly. It's like, okay, all women are like this, all men are like this because men typically do this or women typically do that. But it's like,
or
okay,
this keeps happening to me.
we're not digging deep into the actual psychology and
Yeah.
understanding we're all just human beings and
There's so much
there's so much
pain
more.
and stuff circulating. Like you just,
And I always say my thing is you can look at something in a bad light and you can see something very badly, or you could actually want to heal it. You could
Yeah.
actually want to help it. And if you're not speaking in a place that's looking to do that, you can't say that you're healing. If you're saying, be against this.
Yeah,
War's
exactly.
not helping in the same way
and that
healing
can go,
way.
and that goes for like any
Yeah.
thing, any subcategory of anything that makes us human. Like, oh, this group of people. It's like we can't say
Yeah.
that anymore. About it's okay to say that about the opposite genders,
Yeah.
and it's like, guys, we should be like seeing more nuance here. It's not just this group of people does this.
Exactly. So there's so much of our feeds that are filled with this idea, and I'm glad it's like when I met you, there was so much openness that you had, and I think it's a key thing that we need to experience in that realm, that we need to be open to each other, understand ourselves, and once you hit that point of having the openness, be able to establish your boundaries.
Yes,
That's
boundaries.
a big thing.
Yeah.
I actually was recently speaking with someone earlier, and their thing was to use as an example when I mentioned how the boundaries are such a nuanced conversation. They were saying, their partner, they were gonna partake in the caravan, like the mass parade, right? And they were saying like, I just don't feel comfortable like with it. I don't understand the culture. I don't understand. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what to do. Should I voice it? And eventually they voiced it to their partner. Their partner was like, I don't like you controlling me. I don't like this feeling. I don't want you. You're not going to tell me what to do. And they're confused what to do. But it's like, I feel like you need to sometimes understand your boundaries and understand what someone's telling you. And you need to also be honest with yourself of, you know what? I know I am okay with these things. I want this kind of a life. This person, and a person doesn't have to be a bad person for them not to be what you would want for yourself.
No, it's not about being a bad person. It's just everyone's different.
Everyone's
has
different.
Standards. Yeah.
And you can sometimes be able to say to yourself, you're a good person. What you want for yourself is different from what I would want. And we need to give ourselves that space to find that person, or we're just going to end up being toxic to each other.
Yeah, it's going to be like a resentment.
Because imagine I try to like shape you and say,
force me to...
I don't really like the hours that you work. I need you to kind of work these hours. And let's say even you understand it and you do it. You will eventually hit a point. Yeah. Exactly. You would eventually hit a point where you would resent me because
it's just like it's kind of like you feel like your integrity and your dignity kind of just gets shot down a bit because you're like, I'm a grown adult and I'm kind of just allowing someone else to shape me when I should be focused on shaping myself.
I mean, even say you agree with everything and you are okay with it. Let's take for example, like using that hours thing, right? Some of like the biggest shoots that you're able to get, they're late.
Yeah, they're
so
late.
Imagine you had to say no to those huge things because I wasn't okay with it. You will eventually be like, even if it was something you didn't want to, the fact that I'm the person that put this on you,
instead of myself,
you'll eventually say, it's because of this person. I feel a kind of way, and that just builds over time.
Yeah, it does. And just like speaking on boundaries in general, like one thing for me, like that I will be open about that I had an issue with, and I'm still kind of like figuring out, but I feel like you saw when we met is like I'm very like I can do the thing where I feel like I have to overextend.
Yeah.
And it's like you ask me to do something and in my head I'm like, yeah, of course I want to do it. I'm going to make sure that I can do it. Like my brain just like doesn't compute the other things I need to do. Its first instinct is to be like, yes, I need to help. And you pointed that out at some point. I think maybe like a year or so, and it was before we lived here. We lived in in another place. And yeah, that's something that I had to accept and hear from someone else to really be like, okay, yeah, like I need to, not only with you, but just like with everyone else, with clients, with friends, with everything, like boundaries are very important, and being straightforward and straight up with how I feel. It's like, these are all boundaries. It's very, very important. And I just appreciate how you kind of like approached that conversation in a nurturing way. It wasn't like kind of like scolding or anything, or kind of like making it come off like there's something wrong with me. It was more so just like, listen, like I've seen, you know, people, like I've grown up and I've seen people do this, and it's like I never want you to feel like you have to do that, because again, it goes back to the resentment. It's like, yeah, I may agree and want to help you with X, Y, and Z, but over time, it's like you will resent that person if you just completely avoid the conversation and avoid the topic.
Yeah.
Because it's like you feel it. You feel it physically, you feel it mentally. You start to be like, okay, I'm doing so much. And it's like, it's technically not your fault or anyone else's fault because you never forced it. But it's just funny how the psychology works with that, because you do end up resenting if you don't, if you're not conscious of it.
And, you know, that brings up a good point, too, of, like, with figuring things in a healthy way in a relationship, I had to learn as well is, I guess that's so much, like, I guess a bit of learn, but also be aware of is, if you recognize something in your partner and you think, let's say there could be things that, not so much you're trying to mold a partner to the lifestyle that you want, but you can still be able to recognize certain things that can help your partner.
Yeah, there's a difference. There's a difference of, like, I feel like helping your partner get to their best self and just placing a standard on them. There's a huge difference. Yeah. Like,
and you have to ask yourself, is it I'm asking this of my partner because of how I feel? Or am I asking this because I actually generally am concerned for the person?
For their well-being, for the person. Because, yeah, this isn't, like, some people can hear, you know, the first part and take it as an excuse of being like, oh, yeah, I can act however I want. And it's like, you can't address me about it because this is how I am. No, that's not the same thing.
But even vice versa, it's also not healthy to kind of see your partner and be like, no, I need you to do this because I'm thinking of you. Yeah, this is best for you.
Yeah, because then it's like also like a weird, like kind of like Mr. Fixer or Mrs. Fixer. Exactly. And it's like, this is also, there's a very fine line.
Yes.
And he, for me, like hit the I don't know, how do you describe it?
Yeah,
You're
that
like,
fine line.
You got like right exactly like where you needed to approach it. Like I never felt like, oh, I'm lesser than, or he thinks that I'm not as strong-headed or like whatever. Like it was always just like, okay, yeah, no, you have a point and I'm learning about myself through you, like from what you're saying. And I think that if it opens your mind and it clears your mind and the person is patient with you, then like I think that is the best approach.
And oh my goodness, I was gonna say with that a second ago.
And like he could hear like little things through it and he's just like, good on you.
And it comes to where it's like, and I see it too with you as well when I say this, because how we have those. It's one thing to understand what frustrated you, but take time and hear what your partner is saying. Take time to actually accept as well what you did as well.
Yeah, it has to be both ways.
There's a lot. Accountability is more than just saying you need to accept this. It's also saying, you know what? Let's just say, for example, I have a glass on the table and you're cleaning the table. And as you're cleaning it, you accidentally hit that glass and that glass now shatters on the floor. Accountability is more than just me saying to you to accept that and to say sorry for breaking the glass, your mistake. It's also a matter of me also saying, you know what? I also could have just not left that glass there.
Yeah,
I probably shouldn't do that. So you know what? Let me take that time to say, you know what? I did do this, and that's fair. My bad for this. But let's look at this. Okay, I heard out your piece of it as well. You've heard on my part. Let's focus going forward here now. And I think even when it's the smallest piece of accountability, when you accept your own
and release the ego,
you release the ego. It actually helps a lot of times with those misunderstandings. It helps a lot of time ease the tension.
Especially those micro little things that happen.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't think that it's important enough to have this whole, like, okay, I need to take accountability. But no, like, I think just, like, putting that into practice, even for the small things, when anything bigger happens, you're already like, yeah, okay, like, we know how we can handle this.
And it's just being able to say, okay, you know what? I need to take away my ego for a second, because the one thing that we fear in those moments is that our partners, they're going to take that piece of acceptance and use it against me. And because they're going to use it against me, I'm going to be the bad guy in this situation. But sometimes, you know what? If that does happen, when you come to a place where you can accept your faults, and this person now takes that and uses that to attack you, is this someone now that you want to have your life with? Because what happens now if you have children now, and this person wants to manipulate your kids against you? You don't. That's going to be.
This goes into.
There's a lot of things where you do, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Is really think about the partner you're with and what you're seeing, and saying to yourself, is this someone that I want to wrap myself in this kind of scenario with? If I think about what I can deal with when it comes to family, when it comes to kids, when it comes to when I'm older, all these things, do I feel like I'm in a secure enough situation with these things?
Where you both want to fight for that type thing. That's a good way to... That's a good way to wrap it,
And so those are the biggest things with discipline of yourself, and accept, you know what, there's going to be things that come around. There's going to be places where it's just like, is there whatever out there? But be able to say, I have what I want right now. Nothing else is going to matter. Putting yourself in a disciplined enough place in all places of your life to be able to say, I don't care for anything else. I can recognize these things, and that's fine. You stay out of my boundary. I can lay my boundary down, feel comfortable where I am at home. And to wrap it up with the last thing, grow with your partner. Constantly find places of growth. And it goes, the biggest things we always focus on, the 4 pillars I talk about, and that's our mental, physical, financial, and spiritual well-being.
That I feel like, is a whole other episode.
100%. 100%.
And we will do more. We will definitely do more. I feel like I can't even get into too much of that right now, because it's just going to go for another half an hour. But we should definitely maybe like hit on each one.
100%.
That would be cool, because I feel like...
So we'll definitely have one episode where we touch on how we help each other with those 4 pillars.
Yeah.
And if from there you have even yourself anything you have relationship-wise you'd like to see us focus on, please feel free to comment below. Message us as well, anything that you can think of, so we could see more ways that we can more tie what we do to yourself. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode. Please follow my lovely fiance at Keems Behind the Cam on all socials.
Yes.
And follow the Healing Manifest. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.